Welcome to Storytelling. This week's guest has been described as a wellbeing alchemist who brings a unique perspective to the process of wellbeing and dis-ease in our lives. Having worked as an interpreter for many years and seen and experienced stress and burnout in herself and colleagues, she decided to look for ways in which she could support herself to let go of anxiety and the beliefs and fears that were holding her back, allowing herself to thrive. She is the author of the book, Take a Walk on the Wild Side, and in this episode she shares her story and gives us food for thought about our perspectives on life. Please welcome Robyn Harris. Hello, Robyn, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Debbie. It's amazing to be here.
Robyn, can you tell me more about Take a Walk on the Wild Side?
Sure. That is the title of my upcoming book. And I'm one of those people who people would say, you should write a book, you should write a book. And I'd kind of go, yeah. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But I always say never. So I didn't say never. And for a good reason, obviously, because it has happened. I've written the book. And basically, it's my story, because I started off several years ago now in a really low, dark, miserable place. And I tried the traditional routes of going to the doctor and getting some medication, going to counselling, and it wasn't working for me. I realise now, looking back, the reason it didn't work was because I felt more dependent rather than less dependent, that it would be the medication or it would be the counsellor. What I wanted was something that was going to give me the tools, that was going to leave me feeling like I've got this now. I'm okay. I've got balance. I know where I'm going in my life. I've got back the reins in my life. And that just wasn't what seemed to be happening. So I thought, I have two choices. I check out of life because I don't want to live like this anymore, or I start looking to see if I can find something for myself. So I chose the second option, and that's where WILD came about. It's an acronym that I had trademarked last year. And getting to the point where I am now, I thought, I see so many people where I was, and I want to share what I've learned in case it might help other people too, because it's not a set of steps. We're not cookie cutter people. One size doesn't fit all. It's more a way of how can we shift our perception? Because everything depends on our perception. As Wayne Dyer said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. The book is about where I started, how I got to where I am now, and what WILD is all about and how it supports our well-being.
So let's take a step back in terms of where you started from, and also look at that transition. What was that aha moment that made you think, I need to look at things in a very different way?
I think the transition was a couple of quotes. I'm the quote queen. I love a good quote. There's one from the Talmud that says, we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
Mm.
It's our perception. And there's the thought belief cycle, that our thoughts create our beliefs, which create our filters, which determine how we see the world, how we interrelate and interact with the world, and how we experience it.
Yeah.
And how we label our experiences as good or bad or whatever. So that quote, and then the Wayne Dyer one that I mentioned, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And I suddenly realized that my life, I felt, was miserable, and I kept pointing my fingers outwards to say if that was different and if they were different and if that changed. And I suddenly realized that's my perception.
Mm.
How about if I could change my perception? Would my experience of the world really change? Because when you're in that position, you kind of think it needs something massive to change. And if it's just me kind of changing my glasses, changing the filter of the world, surely it's not going to make that much difference. But I thought, what have I got to lose? I'll try it out. And then also I read Dr. Bruce Lipton's wonderful quote of the moment you change your perception is the moment you change the chemistry of your body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he talks about we're not at the mercy of the genes that we're born with because our genes switch on and off. They express, how they express depends on so much more than just here's the set of cards that you've been dealt. That's what your life is going to be. It depends so much on our thought processes, on our inner environment, and that we have choice and control over. If we realize that and if we take those reins for ourselves, for me, I didn't feel I had the choice. I did really feel that it was all those things out there. They needed to change. I couldn't do anything. And it's that thing as well of I'll be happy when. And I was sort of thinking that all the time. I'll be happy when my job is good. I'll be happy when I've got a good partner. I'll be happy when I've got this. I'll be happy when I've got that. And that was putting my happiness in the hands of others. So I thought, I'm going to I'm going to do an experiment. And I've since learnt from human design, which I came across fairly recently, that I am a generator and that is life's experimenter. So anyway, I went on this sort of journey of experimentation and curiosity and discovered it's true. It really is true. When you change your perception and have it much more kind of curious and compassionate and open, life really does feel so much better. And when our perception is like that, our chemistry changes and then our well-being changes because our well-being depends on our chemistry.
So what can someone do? They've been in a situation, they feel stuck, and they get to a point where no matter what you say to them, they're just stuck in that mindset. What can they do for themselves?
And that really is what the book is all about. But just to give some examples, I talked about getting curious. And I know that for myself, I was judging myself very critically all the time. My self-talk was very kind of negative. It pulled me down all the time. So just getting curious with compassion, noticing our self-talk, noticing how we speak to ourselves and how that leaves us feeling. So when I was kind of, oh, why did you do that? That was stupid, very judgmental label. But instead, starting to reframe that and just getting curious, why did I do that? Well, I did it because I felt threatened or I felt unsafe or I felt overwhelmed. And I just needed to do something quickly for myself in the moment. And I responded just kind of out of default. So where did that default come from? Why did I fall back into that pattern? Is there another thing that I could have done that would have helped me feel even just a little bit better? And let's try that next time. And it might not happen the next time because I might not recognize that I'm in that moment until afterwards. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. We get much clearer vision with hindsight. But the more I was thinking along those lines, I was creating new neural pathways. And people may have come across NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which is basically about changing how we think, changing how we speak to ourselves, changing our inner language and vocabulary, because it really does make a shift. And it's just about practice. They say it's a minimum of 21 days to create a new habit, but also not to focus on getting rid of the old habit, because that's just pushing against it. It's hard, it's striving. We beat ourselves up every time we fall back into that. But to focus on creating the new habit and thinking about how much better I'm going to feel, because that's uplifting and it builds its own momentum. We get enthused and we want to do it, and then we do feel better and we want more. And it grows. And for me, it's about making the steps really, really simple. Keep it simple and straightforward, that KISS acronym. Because when it's simple and straightforward, it's not big, it's not painful, it's not scary. We'll do it, and then we'll get consistent. And it's the consistency that's important.
So thinking back to your own story, what was one of the first things that you said to yourself?
I wouldn't know a particular phrase, but it was more around being gentle with myself, where I'd been very judgmental and very critical of myself. It was, okay, so you did that. that's what you did, and we can't change it now. But how
Mm.
can we move forward from there? How can we start to reframe things so that the next time you'll do a little bit better and you'll feel better because you're making a change and because you're moving away from the things that when you've done them, you beat yourself up about them. Getting curious with compassion as to why you did them and to understanding and appreciating how difficult actually things have been. Because prior to that, I was dismissing it, dismissing the things that I was finding difficult and why. But that energy didn't go away. It was still within my body. And then it was like one of those stress balls. It would get squeezed when I was stressed and it would pop out in all the inappropriate places, in inappropriate ways. But also, I came to understand that anger is healthy. It's actually just, I think of it like a burglar alarm. It's there to say that our boundaries or our values have been breached or threatened in some way. So when I felt angry, rather than lashing out, then I could look at, well, why do I feel angry? What value has been compromised in some way? What boundary has been compromised? Right, how can I deal with that in a more constructive way rather than just throwing a temper tantrum? But also knowing that, and I've got a post about this coming out shortly on social media, about we lapse into those childish behaviours, those throwing the tantrum, throwing the teddy out the pram, because something has been reactivated within us. I was working with somebody recently and I said to her, when that happens, when you're experiencing that childhood rush of, I just need to throw a tantrum and stamp my feet, what age do you feel? And then what happened to you at that age? You talked about being stuck. Quite often, that inner child is stuck within us, still at that age. So she said that she felt like she was 6 years old. And we explored what happened in her life at 6 years old. And that gave her a really deep aha insight moment that we could then work on so that she could start to process what had happened at that age and then release it. And then it's not there as ammunition to be reactivated. So no more feeling that we have to revert to that childish behavior because I've released that now. I've released that anger. It's no longer there. It doesn't get reactivated.
You make it sound so wonderfully simple, but I think it's also so wonderfully true that there are emotions that we haven't had the opportunity or the know-how to actually let go of. And we don't really know when those unresolved emotions may show up in our lives. And neither do we realize that we can associate it with what's happened to us in the past either.
And I think that's part of the kind of problem because we aren't taught these things. So we don't know them. Society teaches us rather, like it may not be overtly teaching us, but the message is push that down. We don't want to go there. Mm-hmm. For example, nice girls don't get angry. So for women, that can be a real challenge. Men too, sometimes they're told that's not appropriate behavior or not shown how we can express our anger in healthy ways, because it doesn't mean getting violent. Mm-hmm. And actually, when we press down our anger, then we're suppressing our health and we're suppressing our energy. So when we learn how we can express it in healthy ways, we still have that energy. And the energy has a purpose. It's to support us in taking action, to shoring up our boundaries and coming to a realization and an understanding of what our values are and being able to say, no, I really do believe that. And I'm going to stick to that. And if you don't believe that or you disagree, your values are different, that's okay. But I'm going to respect my boundaries and I'll respect yours too. And we can come to some agreement, we can talk about it, or we can agree to disagree. But we don't have to fight each other about it. So I think if we learnt that actually it is that simple, then we wouldn't be hiding away from our feelings. We wouldn't feel shame about them. We wouldn't feel we have to cover them up. We'd be better able to talk, express, actually express, get them out of our system. And emotions are just energy, energy in motion, emotion. They're energy, they're information for us that we can take and learn from and grow from. And when we have that understanding, it takes away a lot of the feeling bad about it and the reactions that can come up.
So, Robyn, take a walk on the wild side. What does the wild stand for?
It is that shift of perception. And the W is for wonder. Because when we can look at the world with those childlike eyes, you think of that little innocent child who just wants to know, what's a rainbow? Why is the sky blue? How does that bird fly? How does that ship float? Why do some things float and some things sink? And it's just, why, what? That's just amazing. Wow. Rather than as adults, we get so jaded and cynical and But when we can be excited and enthused and curious and just want to know, we have this natural, and I don't think it stops as a child. The child is like a little sponge and they just want more information and they want to know why. And as adults, that can get rather annoying when the little toddler is just going, but why? But why? But why? But I think when we can get back to that openness, that beginner's mind, that excitement, that joy at learning different things, then that shifts our perception. I is for intuition. Our body has such wisdom. It's a biological system. It knows what it needs. Every single cell in our body knows what it needs in order to be in balance and to be working at its optimum. And when we listen to our gut, it can help to guide us. Our gut is kind of like an inner compass or a sat-nav system. And we know now that our gut brain has more activity, and our heart brain, they have more activity than our head brain. And there's more information going from the heart and the gut to our head brain rather than the other way around. So why do we place so much emphasis on our head brain and get stuck up there, going in those hamster wheel loops, rather than listening to our intuition and letting it guide us for what's true for us?
I think that's where that term gut instincts come from.
And listen to your gut. Yeah. And then L is love yourself. Love yourself as you are, but also as you are not. Because we tend to criticize ourselves and we look at others and think, oh, they're so good. They can do this. They can do that. I wish I could do that, but I can't. I'm not good enough. But accepting ourselves for all that we are unique. And think of all the amazing things that came together to form me as an individual, you as an individual. We are stardust. We are the product of millennia, of generations of different peoples coming together and creating new generations. So we're amazing, really. And when we can love ourselves, not criticize ourselves and pull ourselves down, then we're free to be who we were born to be. And we're free to live in joy and to bring that joy and that light to everyone around us. And then the last D is for dance. Because I think so often we're striving in life and we might feel like I'm taking one step forward and two steps back. And it's just a struggle and it's so hard and I'm exhausted. Rather than, how about if it's a dance? Then it doesn't matter if you take one step forward and two steps back or to the side, because that's just the dance. And the music might change and the tempo might change. And we might dance with different people at different times in our lives, go in different directions, try different steps. But it's all okay, because it's not a test. We're not being judged. It's just an experience. And I think we're here to have fun and we're here to experience and we're here to enjoy that experience.
So, Robyn, in writing your book, what is the one thing that you learnt or took away from that experience?
For me, partly it was writing a book is challenging. Initially, because it was my own story, I just sat down and I wrote it. But then working with my editor, she was really helping me to make it the best that it could be and to create this masterpiece, I think, that she's helped me create. But she kept saying, you haven't gone deeply enough here. This bit isn't clear enough. So I would come back and I'd have to, right, okay, I thought I'd neatly skirted around that little bit and made it all kind of all right, not revealing too much, not going too much into my vulnerability. But my editor, no, we must actually tell this as it is. Okay. So, yeah, it's amazing. But at the same time, it was going back over so much of my journey and reminding myself of so much. And I said that it was challenging writing it. So quite often it revealed little areas that I still needed to work on and reminded me how to do that.
Yeah.
So it was a really interesting process. And I think that going through that journey, I'm probably going through the journey that I'm inviting other people to join me on as well. So I'm hoping that people can relate. When they read the book, they can really relate to what I'm sharing. Because although we're all individuals, I think underneath our humanity and the questions we ask ourselves and those sort of existential things that keep us awake in the middle of the night, I think there's so much alike. We have so much in common, I think.
I totally agree with you. And we do have a lot in common, whether we realize it or not, that some of those questions and some of those life journeys, we may go through them at different times, but there are more similarities than less.
Yes.
Robyn, before we go, what is the one last final words of wisdom that you would like to leave the audience?
I would like to invite people to really listen to their bodies, to listen to that inner compass, their gut wisdom, and to trust it. Because I think we've learned not to, whether that's about well-being or our career. I myself was kind of guided by my career as tutor in school, and I went off on a journey I didn't want to be on. Thankfully, my life didn't stay on that path. It took another one. But I think just to know that your body knows and to let it guide you and not to be afraid of that.
Robyn, I want to thank you so much for sharing your book, your journey, and for being a guest on this podcast.
Debbie, it's been an honor to be here and to be able to share some of my passion with you and with your audience. Thank you.
If you would like further details about Robyn and to order a copy of her book, then please follow links in the show notes.